Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Tech in 10, the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs football show from the Ruston Daily Leader. I am sports editor Matt Belinson coming to you on this bye week. Louisiana Tech is off this week after losing to FIU last Saturday, 17 to 10 to drop to 1-3 overall, and 0-1 in conference play. Figured with just given the bye week and obviously the lack of content that's coming out, no press conference, obviously no game to cover. I figured this would be a good time to kind of change things up in terms of Tech and 10. I've always wanted to do kind of a mailbag episode and hear from the fan base just kind of what your thoughts are and the state of Tech football, how they feel like the season's going, and just wanted to gauge just kind of where the fan base is at. Because obviously, if given where Louisiana Tech sits right now, there's definitely some questions that need to be asked, and definitely some questions that need to be answered. Some of those I can try my best to answer, and some of those are up to Sonny Cumbie and Ryan Ivey to answer. But that being said, yeah, I just wanted to kind of open up the mailbag on Twitter this week, and you got some good questions. A lot of them kind of stem from a similar place in terms of frustrated, just in terms of the Louisiana Tech not being able to win close games, not being able to beat teams that they probably should, with a third-year head coach in Sonny Cumbie, and so I'm just going to kind of combine a lot of questions that were asked, about why have we made the change, what is it going to take to make a change of head coach, can we afford to make a change. Um, I guess just first of all, I'll say off the bat that that's a decision for Ryan Ivey. And I know a lot of fans are going to roll their eyes and say, like, yep, there's Matt copping out of an answer. But I think it's a truthful answer. I mean, I'm not the person that's in charge of making the decision of whether or not Sonny Cumbie's tenure here at Louisiana Tech has been a success. I can certainly point to data that says, hey, this is not working. I can point to the wins and losses and say that Louisiana Tech has not won under Sonny Cumbie. That is a fact. But I think in terms of the trajectory of the program and the future of the program, that's a decision for Louisiana Tech Athletic Director Ryan Ivey to make. And I think it would be unwise, at least in my opinion, if you want an answer, I think it would be unwise for Louisiana Tech to part ways if they wanted to with Sonny Cumbie in the middle of the season. I think that would create so much more instability than what potentially is already there, that I think it would be unwise to just kind of drop that on players. That and you look at Michael Richard, obviously the Conference USA Freshman of the Year last year at safety. He's expressed public support of Sonny Cumbie despite the win-loss record and despite the inept offense that Louisiana Tech has had over the past 3 years. Michael Richard was very vocal this week in terms of defending Sonny Cumbie to fans and kind of pushing back a little bit at fans that are frustrated. And I certainly think that's a good sign if you're Sonny Cumbie and if you're Ryan Ivey to say, hey, like the locker room, one of the leaders in our locker room, one of the young talents that we want to keep on this team moving forward, at least publicly, has not given up on me. And so I think that's a sign that maybe if you're a fan, you could point to and say, hey, you know what? These players are still trying to fight for him. They're still trying to play hard for Sonny Cumbie. They're not just rolling over and just saying we don't care about what this guy has to say anymore. Now, again, I'm not in that locker room. I can't speak to how the collective team feels about him, but I certainly thought that was an interesting sign to see Michael Richard come out and support of Sonny Cumbie when I frankly have never seen the Tech fan base this frustrated. I've covered this team now for 3 seasons, and that loss to FIU and the loss to Tulsa have definitely been the most active and frustrated and just angry I've seen this fan base in terms of wanting to change since I've been here. And so, again, maybe that was Richard kind of responding to some really outlandish, a lot of just vitriol and anger, or maybe it was just truthful and he was like, hey, I mean, I'm riding with my head coach. And I do think if you're a fan that's frustrated, I can see both sides of the coin. The win-loss record for Louisiana Tech under Sonny Cumbie, it's just not good. It's just point blank not good. 4 FBS wins in 3 years, back-to-back 3-9 seasons, and now you're 1-3 overall. The win-loss record is not great. You can't defend it. Sonny Cumbie and Ryan Ivey have said that it's bad, and so in terms of the win-loss record, I could certainly make an argument that Sonny Cumbie has not turned this program into a winner yet, and has certainly not shown signs that things are going to get better. That being said, on the flip side, I think you have to recognize that firing a coach not only in season but before their contract is up definitely creates implications that I think a school like Louisiana Tech, in a conference that Louisiana Tech is in, I think you have to take all those into account. You're talking about nearly a $1.4 million buyout for a school like Louisiana Tech that, frankly, budget-wise, doesn't just have, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to just throw around. But that being said, if you're Ryan Ivey and you want to talk about football being the front porch of an athletic program, if you want to potentially talk about maybe moving conferences at some point, football is the bread and butter. Football is what an athletic department stands on, whether Louisiana Tech wants to admit it or not. And so football definitely is at the point where you can't sell that in terms of going to another league and say, hey, come let us be a part of your league, with this football program that we have currently. But at the same time, it's a $1.4 million buy you got to deal out. I mean, you talk about potentially losing players like a Michael Richard, an Eli Finley, a Fred Robertson, an Evan Bullock. I mean, the young players that have proven things in your program. And you're talking about good recruits that are coming in, and quarterback Jackson Bradley from Oak Grove, linebacker Zarek Hill from Ruston High. I mean, there are definitely implications that if you feel strongly that you want to move on from Sonny Cumbie, that's fine. And again, that's a decision for Ryan Ivey. If you do move on from him, you also have to recognize that there are going to be trap doors that open that could potentially leave the next head coach, if not in a worse position, pretty much the same position that Sonny Cumbie came in, and you're going to have to give that person time, if probably more time than what Sonny Cumbie was afforded. And so I think if you're a fan base, you have to recognize, like, okay, are you up for another 2 or 3 years of pretty much a rebuild, trying to flip a roster and get things back on track, and potentially losing some of these cornerstone pieces, if not only on your current roster, potentially coming in the recruiting cycles that's either Sonny Cumbie or a head coach after him could use. And so I think all those have to be taken into account. That being said, you can't defend the win-loss record. You can't defend the offensive production. I think they're 117th in scoring out of 133 teams for a third-year head coach as a play caller. It's just not great. And so, again, I can certainly understand both sides. I can certainly understand why the fans are frustrated at this point. I would be frustrated too if I was a Louisiana Tech fan, and I keep hearing about how we're going to turn the corner, we're going to see progress at some point. We figured out what the issues are, and then the same story happens every single week. So I certainly get it. I can understand why a fan base is frustrated, but at the same time, that's a decision for Ryan Ivey and President Jim Henderson to make in terms of, do they feel like Sonny Cumbie is the man to turn this around? Do they feel like the trajectory of this program, is in stable hands with Sonny Cumbie? That's a decision for them to make. Certainly, like I said, I've laid out the case, I think, on both sides, and we'll just kind of see what happens from there. But definitely wanted to, not ignore the questions, because obviously that was a bulk of them in this mailbag. But at the same time, just want to acknowledge, like, the final decision is not up to me. I could see pros and cons to both, but at the same time, we all have to recognize that that's a decision for Ryan Ivey to make, which is why, if you're a fan base that says we don't really know what the AD is thinking, we don't know what he's looking for in this football season, I think you need to go on the RustonDailyLeader.com and read the interview that I did with him before the season. I think it was 2 weeks before the season, in fact, where he talks about, are we winning the games that we're supposed to win? Are we competitive in games? One thing that really stuck out to me that he said was, are we making the same mistake? I think if you're a fan base, and I think if you're this coaching staff, I think you want to take those words to heart. Because when you talk about a Louisiana Tech offense that continues to struggle in the first half of games, when you can't score touchdowns on your first drive, when you have penalties take away touchdowns off the board, I think those are things that if you're a fan base and you're saying, hey, the athletic director doesn't really care, the athletic director doesn't, we don't know what he's looking for when it comes to firing Sonny Cumbie, we don't know what his evaluation is of Sonny Cumbie in this football program. I mean, he said it on the record, in the Ruston Daily Leader, about a month or so ago. So I would encourage fans that missed that story to go on our website and read that, and check out his full answers, and then use those answers to, obviously inform what you're watching the rest of the year. In your mind, if you're seeing the same mistakes committed, chances are that Ryan Ivey's seeing those same mistakes committed too. And then obviously Ryan Ivey can make the decision that he wants to at the end of the year after the Kennesaw State game of where he feels like the direction of this program is. But bottom line, that's a decision for Ryan Ivey to make. I've laid out both cases. And obviously there's still time for Louisiana Tech to turn things around. Again, when you talk about Middle Tennessee, UTEP, New Mexico State, part of your next 3 games, I mean, those are games that on paper Louisiana Tech should win, if not be pretty evenly matched in. And so if you win 2 of those 3 games, if you sweep those games, then you're right back in the mix. If you lose 2 of those 3 games, or if you lose all 3, then the conversation definitely can grow louder just around the coaching, conversation. And so again, I'll leave the question there, but definitely did not just want to ignore it because I know that's on the mind of a lot of fans that are frustrated. And so obviously this was the point of this mailbag, was to put the call out to you to ask for your questions, and you responded. And so just wanted to kind of lay out both sides of the argument for you, for those that are wondering. One more question I wanted to get to was from Sidelines at Louisiana Tech. With Texas State having major talks with the Mountain West Conference, what should be the plan for Louisiana Tech if a spot opens in the Sun Belt? Pros and cons of leaving Conference USA for the Sun Belt. This question was sent in 2 days prior to ESPN's Pete Thamel reporting that Texas State is actually no longer, at least at this point, looking to move conferences. And then actually they put out a statement Tuesday night saying that they're no longer looking to leave the Sun Belt, and they're going to stick with the Sun Belt for now, and then maybe potentially move on, at some point if an opportunity comes about, maybe for the Pac-12 or something like that. But obviously at this point, Louisiana Tech is not going to be leaving Conference USA, at least as of today, Wednesday, October 2nd, because obviously realignment can change so quickly in today's college football. But I do understand the question, and I think it's a fair one, because I remember Ryan Ivey, I think it was the day after he was hired, he went on the radio in Monroe and was asked, on a radio program there, do you feel like Conference USA is a good fit for Louisiana Tech? And he was pretty firm in saying, I don't know in terms of the regionality, in terms of the rivalries that we've lost, in terms of the travel that we ask our student athletes to make. He definitely didn't just come out and say, hey, this is rainbows and cupcakes. This conference definitely has some issues for Louisiana Tech, just in terms of the travel, in terms of the regional rivalries, and kind of the scheduling conflicts that come about. And so I think from day one, Ryan Ivey has been a guy that has always wanted to kind of look for new opportunities. He's always wanted to expand Louisiana Tech's footprint. And I think if something does come up in the future with the Sun Belt, if Texas State were to leave at some point, if another school were to leave at some point, I think you definitely have to pursue a Sun Belt partnership, and if not, joining the league, because you just look at Conference USA on paper. You could kind of flip-flop between the MAC and Conference USA in terms of probably the worst FBS conferences in the country when you talk about the quality of teams in the league, when you talk about kind of the regional, just the spread out nature of the league, and just kind of the disjointedness and frankly the competitive balance that is not there. And so I think if you're Louisiana Tech, should something come up with the Sun Belt, I frankly don't see a con to leaving Conference USA, to be honest. I mean, you're probably going to pay some sort of exit fee, which I'm sure won't be cheap. But at the same time, I'd rather bite that bullet and join a more competitive league in football and baseball. Probably not in basketball, but football and baseball, your two probably most prominent sports at Louisiana Tech. I think I would jump to the Sun Belt in a heartbeat, frankly. If that means I no longer have to play Middle Tennessee, UTEP, Sam Houston, New Mexico State. Just all these teams that are just frankly not very attractive and not really giving you a lot of national exposure in terms of a competitive, balance, competitive scheduling. And so I think if you're Louisiana Tech, should something come about with the Sun Belt, jump toward it. Obviously, I know Ryan Ivey was not here, during COVID, when there was kind of a discussion with the previous AD about kind of sticking his nose up to the Sun Belt and saying, Louisiana Tech is above the Sun Belt. And I'm sure there probably is some bad blood between the conference office and Louisiana Tech. But that being said, Ryan Ivey is a different person. And he's obviously again been one to explore opportunities and wants to get Louisiana Tech involved at a higher level, and wants to return the athletic programs at Louisiana Tech overall to national respectability. And I think it's obviously harder to do that in Conference USA than it would be in the Sun Belt when you're playing ULM, when you're playing Lafayette, when you're playing Troy, Southern Miss. Just all the teams that I think on paper would give you a little bit more competitiveness, and it would also give your fans, I guess, something more to care about. I think a Louisiana Tech fan would rather come to Joy Stadium and watch ULM or Lafayette play than watch FIU or Middle Tennessee. And so again, I think if you're Louisiana Tech, I don't really see a con to leaving for the Sun Belt. But again, obviously that's a decision for Ryan Ivey and Jim Henderson to make when it comes to the financial and obviously the advertising, dollars and things like that come from leaving Conference USA for the Sun Belt. And so again, interesting question, and I certainly think it's something to monitor. Obviously there's been a lot of talk with the Mountain West and Pac-12 and in recent weeks of adding and subtracting teams, and definitely is going to be a curious one to see if Conference USA or the Sun Belt kind of become that poaching ground for some of those leagues. And then should that happen, Maybe Louisiana Tech can find its way into the Sun Belt. But just to put a bow on that answer, I think if you're Louisiana Tech and the Sun Belt has an opening, you have to do everything you can to get in there. Frankly, it's a better league than Conference USA, and in pretty much every single way. And I would expect that Ryan Ivey would agree. And so again, as of today, that's not a possibility. But obviously, again, in college football today and college athletics today, that can change within a matter of days. And so definitely something to keep an eye on. If I am a Tech fan, I definitely would be crossing my fingers to hope that Texas State, gets an invite from the Pac-12, or maybe someone else from the Sun Belt gets an invite from the Pac-12 or Mountain West and potentially jumps on it. So, well, with that said, those were kind of the two big questions that people wanted answers to on this edition of Tech in 10 Mailbag. I really appreciate everyone reaching out and submitting questions. And yeah, like I said, Louisiana Tech. I mean, you're 1-3 overall. You're 0-1 in conference play. You got 8 games left. If you're Sonny Cumbie and if you're this coaching staff and you want to prove that you can turn this program around, if you want to prove that you are the people that should be in charge of this going forward, you got 8 games to prove it. And so again, Louisiana Tech currently 1-3 overall, 0-1 in Conference USA play. They will return on Thursday to host Middle Tennessee at Joe Ice Stadium, and what I would probably consider a must-win if you're Louisiana Tech. So again, that's going to do it for this edition of Tech in 10. Again, I really appreciate you all submitting questions for this mailbag. Maybe at some point further down in the season, we'll maybe try this again, and would love to hear your feedback as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. So for now, this is Matt Belinson for the Ruston Daily Leader saying thanks for listening. Have a good one.